With rumors of a coup sweeping through Colombo and Sri Lanka's Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa having fled to a naval base along with his family after resigning on Monday, life remains deeply unsettled in this Indian Ocean island nation. Staring into an abyss of debt and haunted by bankruptcy, Sri Lanka has been in the grip of a remarkable uprising by its citizens. In a slight he may not live down soon, after weeks of protests, the country's Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was forced to resign by his own younger brother, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Mahinda Rajapaksa was once a much celebrated and much dreaded strongman of Sri Lanka. The stunningly beautiful island nation is face to face with the ugly reality of total outstanding foreign loans of $50 billion, $7 billion of which is coming due this year. With all round shortages of medicines, food, and fuel, the country's economy is in a tailspin and its citizens increasingly impatient. One compelling feature of the protests has been young Sri Lankans rallying the country using social media. One of them, advocating peaceful protests, is the Colombo born and based architect Aishani Jayasinghe. Throughout the weeks of the country's ferment, the 43-year-old managing director and co-principal architect at JAN Merkaba Limited, Jayasinghe has done her bit to keep the peaceful movement going, along with thousands of others like her. Aishani Jayasinghe spoke to Mayank Shah Reports from Colombo. First of all, welcome to Mayank Shah Reports. Aishani, it's a great pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Mayank. It's my pleasure to be here talking to you today.
Thank you. There are rumors of a coup which the army has denied, of course. What is your sense about the situation in the streets now that the army is out in full force?
Well, the army is out in full force, but however, we were in fact thinking the army should have been out by yesterday because there were riots happening, which was completely unexpected, where they were basically setting fire to houses and vehicles of parliamentarians, which was not, expected at all. This happened after the attack on the peaceful protesters at the Golf-Face Green last morning.
Right. Do you suspect that some of the violence might have been staged to sort of create a pretext for the army to get very tough, if not take over altogether?
Well, people were suspecting. People were suspecting because nobody was taking action. Like police was not doing anything and the army was not doing anything. So that is why I said that, we were expecting the army, the military, and the police to be out earlier than this.
I see.
However, in regard to your question on the military coup, well, we don't know. We think, there's a slight chance it could be, because you never know what is cooking below. But nevertheless, everybody is very vigilant and quite aware of the possibility. So everybody is keeping check on what is going on.
Right. It's clear now that the Rajapaksas have completely fallen out of favor, even for those who might have been their ardent supporters once. That's my sense, sitting some 10,000 miles away. What is your sense? Do you think they may be facing great diminishment in their popular support?
Definitely. The thing is, people expected a lot from Gotabaya because he was never in politics before. So the Mahinda Rajapaksa supporters and the kind of wavering voters who were not really to or from a party, they all thought that maybe Mahinda, maybe Gotabaya, because he was not politically, corrupt or, used to the political wrongdoings,
Right.
would do better because he did perform well. when he was given the urban development and that kind of other areas in the
Right.
country during Mahinda Rajapaksa's regime.
Right.
So that's what happened. But then people realized that, the government was completely incompetent. They didn't know what they were doing. They were getting the wrong advice, wrong people in the wrong places, the big places. The decision making positions were given to incompetent people who were, useful for them to carry out the corrupt activities or their dealings, etc. And I mean, people knew this was happening. People knew that all the corruption was going on. People knew all the dealings. The thing with Sri Lankans is when there is something that you can't uh, fix or help, they just make a joke out of it
Right.
and you decide. That's our way
Right.
of dealing,
Yes.
especially after decades of war and bad things happening in the country. So, there were lots of jokes on how commissions were taken, how the deals were done, and money was siphoned out, etc. Uh, but the thing is, it came to a point where they did it so openly and so ruthlessly that they basically drained everything out of the country. And there was no money whatsoever in the country for the government itself to bring in what was really necessary for the people. So people were just shoved to the back seat, and their agendas personal agendas were uh, brought forward for, the decisions were made based on their agendas rather than what was good for the country.
Right.
That's what happened, and people
Right.
suffered a lot.
There is a growing view in certain parts of India, especially among the academic and journalistic community, that what the Tamils suffered for a long time, the Sinhalese people are suffering now, and they are reacting to it very differently. What's your view of that?
I think everyone is suffering.
Mhm.
Tamils are suffering, Muslims are suffering, Sinhalese are suffering, Burghers are suffering, everyone in Sri Lanka, even the expats who live here, everyone is suffering in the same way because um, the general necessities are not there. uh, I think what really ticked it off was power and fuel. People kind of tolerated everything else. Then there was no gas for cooking. The restaurant businesses were suffering really badly. The households couldn't make their food. And then on top of that, they started cutting electricity, having power cuts. And then it extended. And the day that it really extended, that's when the first protest came out in Mirihana, that is close to the president's house. The thing is, there were areas where, president and the so-called VIPs were living, which did not have power cuts.
Right.
These were VIP areas.
That's true.
So, people were like, what is this? You did this, you brought the country to this, and you live with our tax money. And of course, people believe that, a lot of it was stolen money
Right.
from the country. And on top of that, we have to go through all the hardships. And the government ministers and officials, they're let off scot free, they don't suffer at all.
Right.
And that's when they went out. A few people in darkness, when there was no electricity that night, went out and started protesting, saying, "Gota, go home."
Right. That's a pretty smart slogan, actually.
Yes. The key slogans actually tell the story. They say, "Gota, go home,
Yeah.
arrest the Rajapaksas, give
Right.
our money back."
Right.
That sums up everything.
Absolutely. It strikes me that the trajectory of the protests is now such that it might even lead to the ouster of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Do you think that might happen?
We're very hopeful that it might happen. And we think there is a great possibility of making it happen because the protesters are not going home until he goes. They have been camping out there for like over a month now. Today is the 32nd day at Golface Green. And in fact, today there was an announcement saying because we have curfew due to yesterday's events, that nobody is allowed to be outside. But then people have come to such a state where they do not even listen to any of the government announcements or rules. It's come to a stage where people have decided that we have to take care of ourselves and we have to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
They have no faith.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, I read that the president is trying to form some sort of unity government to essentially work around the mess that he finds himself in. Do you think that could happen?
Yes, a unity government is being discussed, and I think it is on its way coming out because we don't have money to go in for an election. They have to come up with some sort of a solution, and it has to come through the parliament.
Right.
And what they're trying to do, I'm assuming, is to bring in different people from the different parties and form a cabinet where they will address these issues with a new prime minister, where they will address the issues and try to rectify this mess in some sort of a way, like, to bring it to acceptable or like, slightly more reasonable state for the people.
Right. Speaking of a new prime minister, who are the people in the running for that at this stage?
Well, there are several in discussion. Two from two of the opposition parties, and they're also discussing a senior former parliamentarian from outside to bring him in, but we're still not sure who is going to be brought in or what is going to happen.
Right.
But people are saying that they want the president to leave.
So essentially, even if there is a unity government, the influence of the Rajapaksas has to completely cease for people to be pacified at this stage.
In a way, yes. Or I should actually say most definitely yes.
Okay.
Because people want a clean slate to start with. People want to change this corrupt way of running a country, which has been taking place for a long time, and people have had enough of it. And we see the need for us to really change the system around and bring in something. People are looking for a leader they can, leader who will be accountable, leader who will think of the country first, and of course a competent leader who can bring the country back to where it was or where it should be.
Right. Beijing looms large over the country's existence because of it having virtually pushed Colombo into a debt trap. What is your sense of how Beijing is looking at the current unrest? Because the Rajapaksas were rather cozy with the Beijing leadership.
Yes, they were. But as the Sri Lankans, the people see it, we see a tug of war between China and India. And Sri Lanka is caught in the middle. I mean, the people are caught in the middle because the government was playing both sides at the same time. One wants a port, then if you give port to one, the other wants another port, and then oil tankers on this side and something else on the other side. It was just like they were basically auctioning out the country to these foreign countries. The sovereignty and the sovereign assets that we had were simply just given out because they were making these deals. We believe they were paid for these. They were paid to make these deals and to hand over sovereign property to other countries.
Yeah, but between China, the toss-up between China and India, where do you think the Sri Lankans mostly come down on? Which side?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, because I know for a fact that they do not reflexively come down on the side of India. I have that experience.
Uh, I actually can't say.
Okay.
We're not in favor of either of the two because we see negatives in both coming in, and uh, you know, we are really holding on to the idea of like we do not want our sovereignty touched,
Hmm.
and some of the statements that were made by Indian uh, government officials were disturbing for the people, where it implicated that, if there is a threat of China coming in, India should send in the forces before that, or something like that,
Hmm.
which was very disturbing for the public. And we are basically afraid of any of the two coming in and putting their hand into our affairs, other than for like friendly gestures, or like uh, friendly relationships which we have maintained
Right.
uh, with both the countries before.
Right. But
As you,
India has extended a fairly significant line of credit at a time when Colombo desperately needs it.
yes, yes, they have, and that was well taken and appreciated by everyone. But then again, people are like, is there any free lunch anywhere?
Not true. But from looking at it from this side of the fence, unlike China, which has become colonizing in its mindset in recent decades, especially in the last 20 years, colonizing without really colonizing, their model is debt trap everywhere.
Yes, yes.
But in contrast, India has historically never been in that direction. It has never tried to take over anything. It's
That's
been taken over by. So I don't think the Indian designs would be to take over Sri Lanka in any significant way.
I don't think India had that motive in a Chinese kind of sense, but then India feels threatened when China is here.
Right,
So that is why the reactions, I
right,
would say.
right.
So, whichever reason it is, whatever brings it through, but it affects the country here.
It does. To change the gears a bit, it's remarkable that so many young Sri Lankans have jumped into these protests. People like you who are using social media so well. Why do you think that suddenly happened? Because Sri Lanka, I don't think more young Sri Lankans did not really get involved historically in these things. But now I find that it's changed dramatically.
I think that's because maybe in the 80s, uh, the younger generation who stood up and spoke against the government, most of our leaders to be at the time, the young leaders, were killed, were basically put to rest.
Right,
And the message was, you keep quiet or we will end it there. So, but now the next generations have come past it, and they're standing up and they're speaking out and they're saying what's in their mind, and they're acting accordingly as well. So
right.
they're standing up for the country and for themselves.
Do you personally go out and get involved in active street protest, or you take a different route?
I do. I'm not there every day,
Hmm.
as some people are. Like some people are full time there, day and night.
Yeah.
I applaud them. I mean, they've lost their jobs being there protesting on behalf of the country. Whenever possible, I've gone. I've even
Okay.
taken my children there, and I've gone there on my own several times. So, I will take part, and I have taken part in the protest personally, as a form of, direct involvement
Right. Right.
in this.
What is your best hope for the future at this point when you are in such ferment?
Actually, I think we have a lot of hope here. What has happened has really turned the tables, and it can be something really good for Sri Lanka, despite whatever it looks like from the outside, because we are really taking out the bad eggs and cleaning the entire system so that we can start afresh. And
Nice.
Sri Lanka has a lot of resources in terms of what you need for development, and I think the main ingredient that we lacked was governance, because all we had was bad governance. So
Right.
if we can adjust that here, I think we have a very hopeful path ahead of us, and this is really for the future generations.
Right.
Even the youth today, they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it because they want to fix it. They know that it won't be fixed for another decade, at least.
Right.
But they will still do it because they want it to happen at least in the future.
Right. To wrap up, do you think the Rajapaksas as a political class or political influence is over now?
I'm thinking that it could be over.
Okay.
It could actually be over,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
So there is
It's
next
not
to
just
no.
the Rajapaksas. It's not just the Rajapaksas. The
Yeah.
uh, corruption and bad governance has been there for a while. It's the Rajapaksas and the others involved, the main parties
Right.
in the government and the oppositions. They've all mismanaged. They've all not done the right thing. Doing the wrong thing and not doing the right thing are both the same. So they're all accountable, and people don't want to have any of them anymore. They're trying to see who else to bring in. They want
Right.
younger people coming in.
And this goes beyond Colombo. It's not just an urban
it,
centric angst.
it goes beyond Colombo. Colombo, this Gota Go Gama. Gama means
Right.
village in
Yeah.
Sinhalese,
Yeah.
so it's a Gota Go village.
Right.
And so it has been replicated in different areas of the country as well. And really, you have a branch in France, in Los Angeles. The Sri Lankans all over the world have
Yes.
replicated this Gota Go Gama, because everyone is there together in unison,
Yeah.
chanting the same slogans.
Yeah. Mahinda Rajapaksa is holed up at a naval base as of now, along with his family. If things turn out the way you think they may turn out, do you think they have a real exposure to stand trial of some kind, or they'll go scot-free?
Well, if things change as we expect it to, then most probably there is a good chance.
I see. Okay. On that note, Aishani, I want to thank you for your time. It was a great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was really nice to be able to express